Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to have a discussion on the poem Home, written by Warsan Shire. Before entering to the text of the poem, let's have a brief introduction of the poet. Warsan Shire is a poet, activist, editor and teacher. She was born on 1st August 1988 to Somali parents in Kenya. When she was 1 year old, her family migrated to the United Kingdom. In 2011, she published her first collection of poems, Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth. She has also published Her Blue Body in 2015 and Our Men Do Not Belong to Us again in 2015. She has contributed poems to magazines and journals such as Poetry Review, Wasafiri, Sable Lit Mag, etc. Her poems have appeared in anthologies such as Salt Book of Younger Poets in 2011, Long Journeys, African Migrants on the Road in 2013, and Poems That Make Grown Women Cry in 2016. At the age of 24, she was named the first young poet laureate for London. Now, about the poem. The poem Home is a revised version of the prose poem Conversations About a Home at a Deportation Center. It was inspired by a visit Warsan Shire made to the abandoned Somali embassy in Rome, which some young refugees had turned into their home. It is a poem about migration and the traumas and complexities that define it. It explores the forces that drive people to leave their homes. It explores the pain that defines many migrant experiences. It also explores the ways that migrants are received in the countries in which they are seeking refuge. The poem Home attracted much readership in January 2016 following the refugee crisis in Europe. The opening lines of the poem, "No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark," were used in protest demonstrations demanding asylum for refugees. The poem talks about the harsh reality which forces many people to leave their homeland. The homeland is so unlivable that people are forced to migrate to other lands. So now let's have a detailed analysis of the poem. The first four stanzas, the speaker details the violence and trauma that often lead migrants to leave their homes, making it clear that migration is not a choice for the migrants who flee war-torn countries, but they are forced to do that. Otherwise, their life will be lost. The poet begins by talking about how unlivable conditions make people leave home and homeland. She suggests that no one leaves home on one's own, but is forced to migrate or seek refuge. When there is a war going on, one has no choice but to escape from one's homeland. Till they left, no one thought they were leaving. The poet uses powerful metaphors to represent how much the homeland have turned into a terrible thing that forced these migrants escape into other places. She uses metaphors like mouth of a shark, the whole city running, etc., to represent that the homeland is no more a place where they can live peacefully. Home here means not only to the literal home, but also to their native place and their native nation. So they are escaping their native nation because if they do stay there in their place, their lives will be lost. Everybody is running, including their neighbors and other people, and they are terribly tired, but still they are running The line "breath bloody in their throats" shows how much they are tired and suffering while escaping from their homeland, while fleeing from their homeland. And there is another reference that indicates into a terrible human rights issue that is happening there in Africa. That is children being used in warfare there in Africa. If you go for a Google search with the keyword child soldiers in Africa, you can have images, lots of images of children being used there in warfare in Africa. A boy who used to be friend with this poet, who kissed the poet when they were going into their school, is now holding a gun that is bigger than his body. So all these things show the terrible conditions in their homeland which forces them to escape into other places. ആഭ്യന്തര യുദ്ധങ്ങളും കലാപങ്ങളും കൊണ്ട് കലുഷിതമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ചരിത്രമാണ് സൊമാലിയക്കുള്ളത്. ലോകത്തെ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ റെഫ്യൂജീസിനെ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്ത രാഷ്ട്രങ്ങളിലൊന്നാണ് സൊമാലിയ. 2018 മാത്രം 3,20,000 സൊമാലീസാണ് സ്വന്തം രാജ്യം വിട്ട് മറ്റു രാജ്യങ്ങളിൽ അഭയം തേടിയിട്ടുള്ളതെന്നാണ് പറയപ്പെടുന്നത്. The poet tells that it is the home itself which is chasing the refugees, and these refugees have fire under their feet and hot blood in their belly, and they had never thought of escaping their motherland, but now they are forced to do that. They are having death pointed into their neck in the form of a weapon, a sharp weapon. That's why they are escaping. That's why they are fleeing from their motherland. But still they are having patriotism in their veins and in their minds, and they carried the anthem, the national anthem, under their breath. But they know that there is no going back into their motherland. If they do go back, they will be killed. That's why after reaching another nation, they tear up their passport in an airport toilet, because if they do have a passport that shows their identity, that shows their nationality, and sometimes they will be forced to go back into their nation. That's why they are tearing up their passport, so that a going back will be impossible. ലോകത്തിലെ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ പീഡിപ്പിക്കപ്പെട്ട ഒരു മനുഷ്യവിഭാഗമായിട്ടാണ് റോഹിംഗ്യൻ മുസ്ലിംസിനെ പറയുന്നത്. മ്യാൻമാറിൽ ആങ് സാൻ സൂചിയുടെ ഭരണകൂടത്തിൻ്റെ കീഴിൽ അവിടുത്തെ ബുദ്ധന്മാർ ഈ റോഹിംഗ്യൻ മുസ്ലിംസിനെതിരെ കടുത്ത പീഡനങ്ങളാണ് അഴിച്ചുവിട്ടത്. അവസാനം നാടും വീടും ഒക്കെ ഒഴിവാക്കിയിട്ട് ജീവനും കൊണ്ട് ഓടേണ്ടി വരുന്നൊരവസ്ഥയിലാണ് അവരുണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. പക്ഷേ അവരെ സ്വീകരിക്കാൻ ഒരു രാജ്യങ്ങളും തയ്യാറാവാതെ വന്ന് പല ആളുകളും കടലിൽ തന്നെ മരണപ്പെടുകയാണ് ചെയ്തത്. ഈ ഒരു ഇമേജ് ഇങ്ങനെ ജീവന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് കരയിലുള്ളവരോട് യാചിക്കുന്ന ഒരു റോഹിംഗ്യൻ ഫാമിലിയെയാണ് നമുക്കിതിൽ കാണാൻ കഴിയുന്നത്. She tells that no one wants to take risks with their kids, with their children, but now they are forced to place their kids, put their kids in a small boat and escape into another nation, crossing the ocean, expecting all kinds of dangers. It is not possible to cross the ocean in a small boat, but still they are forced to do that because the sea is more safer than the land. They know that there is a possibility for them to lose their lives, but still there is a possibility of escape also. They are taking a chance. If they do stay in their native land, there is no chance of living at all. They know that most of the people do die in the ocean, but still there is a hope. Sometimes they will be saved. That's why the refugees do take lots of risks, just like traveling under trains, beneath carriages, spending day and night in the stomach of a truck, eating newspapers because they have no money and they have no food. So they do eat newspapers to keep themselves alive. It's not a simple journey that they are undertaking, but it is a journey that decides whether they will live or die. So they are taking a journey that signifies something more than journey. Refugees, the people who are fleeing from one nation to another nation, they suffer lots of things, but still they are taking these chances. Nobody actually wants to be pitied, but they have no other ways out. Nobody wants to be beaten, but they have no other choices. That's why they do take all these humiliations, they do take all these tortures. No one would flee their home and put themselves as well as their family into the dangerous and humiliating situation of becoming a refugee unless the alternative was far worse. No one would want to be a refugee, spending days inside trucks, leaving home. One is forced to make refugee camps a home without knowing for how long the refugee camp will be their home. Strip searches here refers to the kind of sexual harassment and sexual tortures that the refugees have to undergo in other nations. Sometimes they will be forced to strip their dresses. Sometimes they will be forced to strip their dress, and the people, the authorities, policemen or soldiers do search their entire body. It is actually a kind of sexual exploitation that they do with refugees. Here, one thing we have to remember is that the poem is narrated in the perspective of a woman or a girl who is fleeing from her mother nation to another place as a refugee. So here she is tortured sexually, she is exploited sexually in other nations where she seeks refuge. The authorities do search her entire body after stripping her dress, and her body is left aching. When she reaches into other nations as a refugee, sometimes they will be put in prisons because they are considered as unlawful immigrants, and they will be put in prisons where they will be sexually exploited by the prison guard. But still she tells that a prison guard is better than a truckload of men. In her native place, the girls or women, they will be gang raped by lots of people. So here it is only a prison guard, but in her native place it would have been lots of men doing a gang rape. So she tells that one prison guard is better than a truckload of men. Nobody is able to suffer all these kinds of things. That's why they are escaping, they are fleeing into another nation. A refugee who leaves home and faces many forms of violence is again greeted with hate on the other side of the shore. Refugees are greeted with protests and are asked to go back. No matter how much the refugee wants to go back home, he or she can't go back, as home is the mouth of a shark and the barrel of the gun. The native people called them as blacks, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, and the Somalian black refugees, they were abused of sucking their country, means Somalia dry, and now they are with their hands out and they want to suck our country also. The native peoples used these kinds of allegations against refugees. According to the native people, the niggers or the Somalian refugees, they have nothing in their hands, and now they are trying to use the resources of the place where they are seeking shelter that the native people doesn't like. According to the native people, the Somalian refugees, the blacks or the Negroes, they are not civilized people. They have bad smells. They have destroyed their country. They have messed up their country. Now these refugees have come into their nation to mess up their nation also. These photographs are the clear examples for how much antagonism and hatred the native people do have towards refugees and immigrants. So this incident happened in Hungary, where a camera woman named Petra Laszlo was seen tripping and kicking at refugees there in Hungary. There in Roski, It is actually a border place between Hungary and Serbia, where the Syrian refugees, they were trying to enter into the refugee reception center in Roske, and while they were running into the refugee reception center, this camera woman is tripping an old man who is holding a small boy in his hand. The old man and the small boy, they fall down. She is again seen kicking at a small girl and kicking at some other people also. Later, she was dismissed from the channel by the channel authorities since these photographs and videos went viral. But still, it shows how much antagonism and hatred the native people do have towards refugees. All this shame caused by the dirty looks and the bad words that roll off your backs, that doesn't affect you because you have suffered something worse. A kind of beating is sometimes better than an organ of your body being cut off from your body. Or sometimes these kinds of bad words and these kinds of dirty looks are better than being raped by 14 men. 14 men between your legs means getting gang raped. For the refugees, the insults that they receive in other nations are easily to be swallowed because they consider it better than seeing their child's body torn into pieces. All refugees have a deep desire in their hearts to go back into their native nation, but since their native nation is the mouth of a shark or the barrel of a gun, that means their native nation is now a place that is not suitable for living. They are forced to stay in other nations. The poet tells that it was the home itself which chased them to the shore to get into the boats and leave their native place. It was the home which told them to quicken their legs, to leave their clothes behind, to crawl through the desert, to wade through the oceans. Sometimes they may get drowned in the ocean. Sometimes they may be saved. Sometimes they may feel hunger. Sometimes they may be forced to beg. Or sometimes they may be forced to forget their pride. But the survival is more important than all these things. It was the way home asked them to leave their native place. With a sweety voice in their ears, home asked them to leave. Home asked them to run away from home. I don't know what I have become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. That means the home itself is asking them to leave because the home has changed. The home has changed into something else and is now no more a safer place to live. That's why the home is asking these people to leave their place. The speaker describes the cruel and harrowing experience of escaping and traveling to a seemingly safer place, only to be welcomed with hatred, bigotry, and ignorance. Through brutal, unflinching vignette that described the horrors of bigotry, but that also explained that going home is impossible. The narrator begins to outline the complexity and darkness that shapes many migrant experiences, leaving them without any safe place to call home. In the last stanza, the speaker begins to look to the future, stating that only her wish to survive is driving her onwards. In the last two stanzas, the speaker repeats the sentiment that no one would leave their home unless home itself drove them away. So that's all about the poem. Thank you.